Everybody, my name is Jodie Flavel, artist and owner of Decoris Vintage Designs, and welcome to my channel. I like to show you guys furniture painting tutorials, and in this week's tutorial I am going to be showing you how to get a very faded vintage looking folksy Mediterranean look, so stay tuned for that. Alright guys, so there is a chance that you might recognise this piece. This piece I did a tutorial on a few weeks ago. However, there wasn't any interest in this piece at all, and it wasn't really moving, and I wasn't really convinced by the look myself. I'm always telling you guys it's only paint, and that's exactly what's happening here, is that I am just repainting an old finish that I want to change up. I am using the Scarlet brush by Dixie Belle, which is a brand new synthetic brush from their range. I also have Pinecone, which is a very brown olive colour, and I'm basically just putting on a base layer of this, and I'm going to cover the whole piece in Pinecone to start with. All of the products that I use today will all be listed below, so if you can't keep up, don't worry, you can just reference the below. You can also purchase these products if you're in the US through the links that I put below. It is an affiliate link, however it doesn't cost you anything extra and it does help me out a little bit. Also, if you enjoy my videos, I do try to put them out on a weekly basis, so don't forget to subscribe to the channel, clicking that bell, which will let you know whenever I post a video, and also like and comment on the video as well, because this also really helps me out as well. Alright, so now that the Pinecone has dried, I am coming in with some Kernel Mustard, which is a very strong deep yellow. I am using my mini brush. I'm not using a lot of water simply because the workshop that I'm in is very cold, so the water doesn't soak or dry very quickly. But if you're in a warm environment, I would suggest misting. However, my brush is actually saturated with a little bit of water, and I'm dipping into the Kernel Mustard, and as I say, just focusing at first just around those edges of the piece. Once I am satisfied with that, I have now got my flat medium brush, and I'm using Daisy. It doesn't really matter what brushes you use here as long as they have a flat surface. Don't use round brushes for this, because what I'm going to be doing is a process called cross hatching, where basically I load my brush up with one colour and then I just keep brushing back, you know, up and downwards and right and left, and it almost then turns into a dry brushing method where I am just trying to take off as much paint as I can. And what this does is it creates a very rustic look. I just want to highlight this panel some more, so again I'm just coming in with another flat brush, and I have Lemonade, which is a very pale yellow, and I am brushing this into the middle where I put the Daisy. I am then coming back in with my Kernel Mustard, and I am just blending this out a little bit, still using that cross hatching method of up and down movements and left and right movements. And I want the brush strokes there, I want it to look very scratchy, but at the same time I don't want it to look like there are clumps of colour. It's got to look natural. So I'm now bringing some Holy Guacamole into this, which is a very light olive green colour. I am using a French tip brush because it's natural bristled and it's going to be very textured, and I am putting this around the frame again. So what I am thinking here is I want it to be very rustic, I want it to look very aged, so I want the Holy Guacamole to provide a little bit of a vignette in some areas and to make it look like it has aged and worn over time. So whenever I apply some Holy Guacamole, I am then coming in with my Kernel Mustard brush again, and again just blending it out a little bit. I don't want to blend it so much that I totally lose the colour, but I do want to blend those edges enough that they don't look totally stark and blotchy. I just want to soften up those edges a little bit. I will also be following the same process for the top of the drawers as well. I've now waited for the piece to be totally dry, and as you can see there are lots of different variations of colour here, and that's because I've used 3 different yellows and a darker colour, Holy Guacamole, and also some Pinecone as well, which has affected the overall tone of the piece. I now have some Barn Red, and I just have a regular old chip brush, nothing special here because this is going to be very, very rustic, and those chip brushes are fantastic for creating very, very rustic looks. I have sprayed a lot of water on this time, and I am focusing the Barn Red, you know, around the indent of the frame there, and I'm just building up the colour slowly. As you can see here, I'm not rushing at all. I'm not trying to get a perfect finish here, and I am also bringing some of the colour into the outer edge on the pulls, and also bringing it into the panel a little bit as well. I'm painting here, I'm actually spritzing my water at the same time, and I am pulling the Barn Red downwards, and I just want to get a few drips going there. As I say, I want this to look very rustic, and I want it to look like most of my furniture. You know, I often like to do furniture that's very rustic and very watery, and you know, I really like to water down colours and play with them in different ways, and this one is no exception. It's the first time I've ever done a yellow piece actually, believe it or not, and I'm just experimenting now. I do think of red as a big contrasting colour to yellow, so again, if you go back to the colour wheel, it is a contrasting colour, and so that is what I have in my head here, is that this red is going to create some really nice contrast and drama. I'm also bringing some of that Barn Red onto the top of the drawers. I am not going to use as much Barn Red on the drawers as what I have done on the panels. The reason for this is that I just want it to look very, very soft up there. So what I've done instead is I'm just focusing the Barn Red around the edges, just dry brushing it on a little bit, and also I will dry a little bit onto the hardware just to get that contrast and to get that chippy look that I'm going for here. So I've gone back now to the panels, I've added a little bit more Barn Red again, and I'm spritzing, and I just want to get some more drips. I feel like a lot of the drips actually disappeared, so I'm going to get a lot more drips on this piece, and then I'm just going to let those drips kind of do their thing, and then let it all settle down, and then come back to it again when it's dry. Okay, so now I have some brand new decoupage paper by Dixie Belle, which is the whimsical Mediterranean decoupage paper, which I think is going to be it's just going to be perfect for this folksy look that I'm going for here. I'm just measuring it up and just trying to figure out where I might want to put this on the panel. Alright, so I'm actually just going to stick this decoupage paper down with a top coat. Here I just have go on, I'm forgetting words again. Here I just have a chip brush, and I'm using the Dixie Belle top coat in flat. I'm using flat because I don't want any gloss here. I want this to be a very matte look, and I'm putting quite a generous amount on there. I'm not putting it on to the point that it's dripping, but I am building up the top coat because I want this to be a very, very solid glue. So then I have my decoupage paper, and what I love about the Dixie Belle top coats is that they do give a little bit of time so that you can maneuver the paper around and figure out exactly where you want it to be. This is here right now, so that was obviously very wonky, and I need to it can be very hard, you know, because I'm trying not to get in the way of the camera, and at the same time trying to make this decoupage paper straight. So I do apologise if I'm a little in the way here. It is the first time I've used this decoupage paper myself, but as you can see, I have had a lot of time to kind of work it, to get it right, and then I'm just coming back in again with my top coat, and I'm just going to apply some top coat over the top just to make sure that this is definitely going to be nice and stuck down. This decoupage paper is actually extremely easy to use. It's very soft while at the same time being very strong, so it can handle the extra bit of top coat if you just want that security. As you can see, I have used quite a bit of top coat here, and I keep working the brush, and the paper is not ripping or molting, or, you know, it's just staying completely solid and intact, which means it's really good paper to use. Also, lots of other decoupage papers that are due to be released in the Dixie Belle range, so if the folksy one may not be your kind of style, I'm sure there will be different styles there to suit your tastes. They will be released on the 17th of this month, March 2021. Okay, so obviously some of you might be thinking here, well, you've not even measured it. Why are you putting it on here when you've not even measured it? And some people do like to measure things such as decoupage before they apply the decoupage paper. I'm the total opposite. I like to get it on there. I'm not very good at measuring, if I'm totally honest. I always seem to mess it up some way. So I have decided to get my decoupage paper on there. And while it is wet, I'm going in with an 80 grit piece of sandpaper, and I am very softly going around those edges. I like to do this while the paper is still damp because it tears much easier. It's not brittle at this point, you know, the top coat hasn't dried it out or anything. It's just still very, very soft and malleable, and so I'm just, as I say, very, very softly going around those edges with my sandpaper, and then I just find that it pulls off really, really easily that way, and I get the perfect fit. Alright, so now I'm using a silkscreen stencil, and this is the Mosaic stencil by Dixie Belle. So I have some antebellum blue, and I'm basically using this pattern and putting it on all four corners. It would have been a good idea actually to, it would have definitely been a good idea to chop this up first beforehand. I don't know why I didn't do that, it's just a bit daft of me really. But yes, so I am basically, I just have an artist brush and some antebellum blue, and I am putting this in all four corners of each door. The silkscreen stencils are fantastic because you can apply them, they just stick down, there's no need to mess around with masking tape and things, and then it's almost like a nylon kind of mesh where the gaps are for the actual stencil itself, and it's impossible to get bleed through with these because it doesn't move around, and because you don't have to worry about, you know, putting excess paint or anything like that on. It's just, all you have to do, it's super easy, is that you just stick it down, and then you do your painting, and then easy as that, it's done. So what's brilliant about them as well is that you actually get 10 uses out of them, so you can actually clean the stencil after each use. And I haven't tried this out so much yet. I do use this one quite a lot for this piece, but I haven't washed the stencil 10 times yet and reused it. But Dixie Belle have advised this is how many times you can actually use the stencil, so you can wash it between uses and use it again. Okay, so continuing on with the mosaic stencil, there is another wedge pattern on there that I absolutely love, and I'm putting this down on the middle bottom of each door using the antebellum blue again. So when I had this piece in mind, it was a very old Mediterranean folksy piece. It was an antique that I found on Pinterest, and it was just very, very over the top and fancy, and so that's how I decided to do this piece. Using a random stencil that I got off Amazon. It's just a vine stencil, and what I decided to do was I was going to hand paint them actually, and then I thought, hang on, I've got lots of stencils here, let's just use a stencil. So I picked up some evergreen, and then I was dabbing some barn red into the evergreen as well, just to get that variation of colour. Again, I'm wanting it to look like the colours have been layered and layered over time, and then it's starting to rub and peel off, just to get that rustic look. I used the vines on the stencil all around the middle parts, you know, so to fill in the gaps between the mosaic stencil that I used with the antebellum blue. And as I say, this is going to be quite over the top. Not over the top in a bad way such, but in a very, it's going to be quite fussy, I should say, actually. And it is just because when I did look at the old pieces of furniture on Pinterest, you know, the antiques with the folk art, there was a lot going on there, guys. And, you know, and that is So I'm just trying to recreate that look now, that antique look, that very fussy Mediterranean folk art look that I have seen on Pinterest. So I just want to make sure that I've got plenty of bold colour on here and plenty of detail, and also I want it to look like some of that colour has started to fade. I've actually now cut up the mosaic stencil here. Woo! I'm just kidding, but yeah, I've cut it, and I am just using this on all four corners of the drawers now. So again, just using my antebellum blue. I just felt like the drawers really needed something, and they were just looking a little bit bare, but at the same time I didn't want to detract away from the main doors, which is the main event. So I just decided to do a little bit of the mosaic stenciling on the drawers here instead. So now I've finished all my stenciling and this piece is completely dry. I have come in with some 320 grit sandpaper and I am just going to sand some of this down a little bit. So what I want is, the colours are looking very, very cartoonish to me. They're looking too bold, they're looking too much like they've just been painted, which of course they have just been painted. So I've come in with some sandpaper now just to rough it up a little bit and to make those colours look a lot more faded, look a lot older and more in synergy with the overall piece. As I go along, I'm also distressing this piece in some areas, so I'm sanding it down to the wood on some of the edges and corners, again just to get that very rustic look. Alright, so now that it's totally dry, it's time to actually wax and seal this piece. So I'm coming in here with the Le Petit brush by Dixie Belle, which is a natural and synthetic mixed brush, and I'm using the Best Dang Wax in Clear. So this brush is fantastic for clear wax because it has a large surface area and it just means I can get a lot of paint on there all in one go. But then I am coming in with some Best Dang Wax in black and I am using the French tip brush for this. The reason I am using a smaller brush for the darker wax is because I feel like it gives me a little bit more control, especially as I am just trying to very softly darken a few areas up and not the whole piece. So the reason why it's good to put clear wax on first before you go in with any decorative waxes is because the clear wax then acts as a base. So then when you come in with your darker wax, for example, and you decide that you don't like it, you can then just come in with some clear wax and brush the clear wax over the top and it will act as an eraser, or alternatively it will just soften up the darker wax a little bit. So I always use Gator Hide for the top of my piece to make sure it's totally sealed, but I love clear wax as a sealer because it dries and then hardens and then it really does protect the piece while leaving a matte finish. And here's the finished look. I really enjoyed working on this piece and I really feel like this is something that could have been plucked out of an old town in Italy somewhere. As always, if you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to leave a comment below and let me know, and also let me know if you've tried a look like this before or if you are wanting to try a look like this. Have a wonderful day and thank you for watching. Bye bye.